welcome into a new edition of Chi Time. This is the show where your energy matters, your vitality is important. We're having a dive in and explore around how you can access more natural energy, but also how you can deeply relax and replenish yourself, because it is this yin-yang dance. The letting go gives rise to space to be able to receive more energy. And this is at the foundation of all the Qigong energy cultivation practice that I know and love and still learning with, have been for the last 25 odd years, although they weren't all odd years. Some of them were pretty spot on, but you know what I mean. It's stepping into exploring what it means to be a person, 21st century, with what's going on in the world. And on this show, I'm really blessed to be able to speak to some thought leaders and world-class teachers. And on this episode of Chi Time, I'm really grateful to welcome back in Dr. Roger Jahnke, who is a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. He's a director of the Institute of the Integral Qigong and Tai Chi. And as a mind-body research and training institute, the IIQTC has trained over 2,000 teachers and practice leaders and contributed to research in numerous respected medical journals. So he is a man at the top of his game. He knows what he's talking about. And he's a key spokesperson for the Tai Chi and Qigong outside of China, and has worked with the ancient shamanic roots of these arts, and with research to define the evidence base and socio-economic policy to leverage the credibility of mind-body practices of like yoga, qigong, mindfulness, meditation, and across all populations and institutions, educational, medical, social, military, across the world. So with 10 research trips to Asia's universities, hospitals, temples, and sacred mountain sites, he has distilled the essence of Qi, or prana, cultivation, and his widely revered books, The Healer Within and The Healing Promise of Qi, are just loved by so many of us learners, as I should say. So welcome indeed back into Qi Time. Dr. Roger, hello, hello.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really looking forward to our time together, and a warm hello to everyone out there.
Indeed, indeed. And so we are recording this on the 1st of March, 2022. And we were originally going to be looking into the metaphysics of Qigong. And I'm sure talking with you, this topic will come through. But also, really what is very present right now for all of us is what's going on in the world over in the Ukraine and how this is affecting us all. And that idea of how can we prepare for something that we don't know how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, well, that's the classic concept of in Chinese medicine. There's the wellness program that has existed for thousands of years, previous even to written history. So that would be 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 years. And what that program includes is our nutrition, our hydration, our rest and recovery, our connection with nature, our connection with other people, our sense of purpose, and alignment with the richest and deepest aspects of our being, even beyond what we think is possible, using the mind that we've been given. You know, the mind is crafted by the surroundings and the history and the people that we know and what we listen to. So as we refine the mind in relationship to its natural, ultimate nature, we learn and grow and evolve. And as we learn and grow and evolve, we realize things like, a really simple example is the difference between convenience and actuality.
Oh, I love that. Can I just say that idea that I was saying before all this happened, several years ago, I was sort of going around this mantra, the culture of convenience is killing us. Everywhere we were looking, if it's convenient, you choose that. And it's not always the right decision. Sometimes it's the absolute worst decision.
Indeed. And another word that's really interesting to put here is the word discipline. We default, of course, to convenience. And so I would like to, be more vital. I would like to have less diabetes in my life. I would like to be more prepared. I would like to feel like
Yes.
I'm not under the illusion that I have no power and I have to defer to the medical industrial complex and to the military industrial complex. And as people cultivate their natural self, they become more autonomous and more sovereign. It doesn't mean that they aren't part of a collective, but it does mean that when they are alone, they're not lonely. They are
Love it.
uh, uh, focused and intentful. And so discipline comes to the thing of like, well, am I going to Kung Fu today? Well, I Kung Fu every day. And it's just like, okay, so, maybe they're going to deliver a large delivery of stones that I'm going to build a walkway with, and so maybe I don't do my kung fu and my qigong on certain rare
Yeah.
days, or if I'm in airplanes all day, maybe no, but mostly yes, yes, yes,
Yes. Do
yes,
it in your
because I
mind.
realized I don't know when it was, but I realized at some point you have to have some discipline. And then as discipline becomes almost as addictive as the celery juice that I drink every morning, or
Okay.
the tea that
Yes.
I'm drinking now. By the
What
way,
kind of tea?
hydration is a part of it too.
What kind of tea have you got there, Dr. Roger?
Well, I have what are called golden monkey. Uh,
Ooh.
that's a Chinese tea, but along with that, I have burdock root, dandelion, root, and a bunch of kind of detoxing. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting it all together
Mm-hmm.
in my little
Mm-hmm.
teapot. I got my little teapot. I've got like a water boiler over here. I'm
Got it
at
all
my
sorted out.
holodeck. This is where I do my work, and so it's all
It's
here.
all
So I'm
there.
I'm hydrating by drinking
Yes.
tea with a little bit of Chinese tea and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of herbal tea throughout
Mixture.
the day. So
I
these are
love
all
it.
like things
Yeah.
that disciplined people develop uh, behaviors that become sacred to them, and
Yes.
those behaviors then become a part of how they sustain their functional capacity and their sense of mental emotional resiliency.
Mm, mm.
I'm not sure I'm still answering the question
No,
that you.
because I think if we're going, which is what happens. I'm doing this gesticulation around. We're going down that little tangent there, and then that one. We're kind of following the chi. But what I'd like to bring up here from this around this preparation, around how we prepare ourselves to basically be human and not be like so vulnerable, thinking that life happens to us. It's like that we actually have choices that we can make, and this relationship that we have with the decision making processes in our minds. I think that's a good place to go to, and maybe have a discussion. Why am I choosing that again? Actually bring consciousness into the choices that you're making, and think, is this just an old pattern that I'm running and I
Yeah.
haven't had a moment to kind of look into, is this actually useful? Oh, no, it's not, is it? What else could I choose? And therefore, discipline becomes something that is a freedom of choice, where you're choosing things that actually are more in line with aligned with your truth and will support your health and your well-being and your creativity. They help you make those things happen in your life. So creating new patterns and habits.
Yep. Favorite word is habituation.
Okay.
Defaulting to convenience is habituation.
Right.
Cultivating the capacity to sustain, uh, uh, develop an intention,
Mm.
and then break that intention into goals, and then to fulfill on those goals by breaking that down further into action steps,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
having the
Yes.
discipline to be able to cycle that process of intention, goal, action step, discipline, discipline, discipline. And when I was in high school, if anybody ever said the word discipline, I would turn to all my friends and
I know.
we would laugh. We would
Yeah, I
just
know.
say,
It's a dirty word.
we'd just say, "Fuck you." and go off into our rebelliousness. Well,
Yeah.
I'm still rebellious, and right now I'm rebellious about the power of discipline because hardly anybody has it.
Excellent. So, in this day and age that we are in, where it's looking like this year is going to be a pivotal year for humanity, how can we prepare ourselves for well-being no matter what, to the best of our abilities? How can we trust the sovereign power of healing that we have within ourselves? And what can we do simply that can activate that?
Sure. So I think it's really interesting that we just had a couple of years that were pivotal,
Yeah, before
and
that, for sure.
without even a well, without more than a tiny break, we're into another circumstance that's pivotal. So let's ask the question, what could I have done to better prepare for having COVID? And what could I do to better prepare for living in a world in which the consequences of sanctions on some party are going to have an influence on everyone? And so the underlying key to our discussion about this is that there's no special preparation. There's general, sustained cultivation of awareness of the potential assaults that can happen in life, which is even as simple as the passage of time. So, okay, war in a foreign nation that's not that far away. Um, uh, a, uh, a virus that came from, like, who cares where it came from? What we need to, I mean, of course we care where it came from, but more important than where it came from is who am I in the uh, when I am confronted with these challenges, and what challenge is coming next.
Yes.
Here we are in the year of the tiger, and I was thinking, okay, well, maybe the tiger will just purr and watch over things. And it turns out that the tiger is roaring. And so if the tiger was purring, I would be preparing. And if the tiger was not purring, I would be preparing. Uh, I don't prepare for this or that. I prepare for being alive and sustainably resilient from
Yes.
moment to moment. So, what are the simple things that we can do? Well, we
Yes.
start with the easiest one, which is remembering to take a deep breath now and then. Something that has no cost, and you don't even have to stop driving or typing or talking on the phone to take a deep breath. And so then we can take that up to, if I can remember to take a deep breath, I can probably remember to hydrate myself. If I can remember to hydrate myself, I might be able to remember to develop and sometimes this is going to be hard for people, but to be able to rest significantly when when I go to bed and before I get up, to have that be restful. And for all of these things to happen, the most powerful thing that can occur is that we can make more space within our local self for the presence of our eternal self. 'Cause the eternal self is always going to be giving the highest quality intuitional signals relative to the media and people who are afraid and unprepared. So where can I turn? I turn within, take refuge, and cultivate the capacity to do that, which actually assists me if I'm having trouble sleeping, being able to turn within, turn off the uh, the cycling of scary thoughts, and qigong and tai chi and kung fu and yoga all contribute to becoming more self-aware in a sustainable way. So I think self-awareness is the bottom line, because
Yeah.
moving from convenience to discipline is going to be rooted in a stronger sense of self-awareness and a stronger sense of the right and the privilege to be an autonomous, self-contained, ready and prepared. You know, when I look at the image right now of like these people in the Ukraine who are deciding that they're going to leave their house, go down and get a gun that they mostly don't even believe in having a gun. And now they are going to do that. And some of them are not prepared, and some of them are. And they're in such a desperate situation that it doesn't matter if they're prepared or not. They're just going to do it because that's basically all they can do to protect their personal freedom and the sustainability of their way of life. Again, I'm kind of unsure as to whether I'm answering your... The idea was, what can we do now? And it's breathe,
Breathe.
hydrate, rest, come up with some kind of physical exercise. And I mean kind of like a bodybuilding type exercise, and then some kind of kung fu or tai chi. I mean, kung fu is great because it is a bodybuilding exercise and a meditation, whereas qigong is more of a meditation. I mean, it does enhance functional capacity, but it doesn't build, you know, striking endurance in the face of hand-to-hand combat, or composting, or weeding the garden, or the other kind of pruning trees. You know, all those things require physical capacity, and they are also very associated with, you know, sustainable survival preparedness.
Yes, yes. Having a body that you can rely on and can use, and have ways to be able to make it stronger without forcing or straining it. But, you know, I go for a walk every day, and sometimes I go for a brisk walk, and sometimes I'll do a leisurely one. But all the time I know that it's there for me. There's a rhythm and a regularity there, and I know that it's gradually building my stamina and my fortitude, and that's just for my legs. Now, when I get home, I would have to do a little bit of movement around my arms for the strength there. But it feels good to engage your body, your physicality with that effort. You know, it's like our bodies are meant to be used wisely in that way, to have the muscle power so that when we can use them to lift, carry, chop water, chop wood, carry water, that we're able to do that. Again, it's away from convenience and into discipline, which I really love that you brought that up. But also the way that we can step into optimizing our immune system too, that these practices of mind, body, spirit, mind, body, soul, help our system to work at its best. Because we often hear about boosting the immune system. We're like, oh, don't think that's quite the right word. The immune system is going to work if we give it the right foundation so it can do its thing, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're going to talk about this. And one of the things that has been stunning as a physician is the fact that when we tune into any source, whether it's what we call mainstream media or even what is typically called alternative media, hardly anyone ever talks about the immune system, the inherent, innate immune system. We talk about natural immunity, which you get from having COVID. And by the way, I have had COVID. I am unvaccinated, and I'm an older person. And so the mythology says that if you're an older person, you're at higher risk because your immune system, your innate immune system, not your natural immunity, that's you get that from having the disease, not your pharmaceutical immunity, that's what you get by getting, you know, heading down to the medical industrial complex to, you know, have somebody protect you in a convenient sort of way. I'm talking about the immune system that is inherent to the human body. So there's this concept of immunogenicity, senescence, immunosenescence. And senescence is a word that comes from the word senile, or they all come, the senile and senescence come from the same root, which means old and incapacitated. And so it is true that a person, as they age, is more likely to be immunosenescent. So people would say, well, you know, you're an older person, you should get vaccinated. And I say, because I did not say this, I just didn't talk about it when people wanted to talk about it. I would basically defer to the idea that I'm glad you made the choices that you've made because you are allowed to make that choice. And let's talk about something else. So, but what for myself, I wanted, as a doctor of Oriental and Chinese medicine, which is a form of natural medicine that is based on maximizing functional capacity, not based on killing diseases, because the human system will kill diseases if it's capacitated. So it was my theory that I should be able to get COVID and survive. And so my wife, Rebecca, and I got COVID, and we had a little fever and a lot of days of napping. But that was pretty much it. In other words, it was, I hate to say this phrase because it has been vilified, but the phrase is, it was just like having a cold. And in fact, I have had flus and colds that were much worse than my COVID. And I have now also had the antibody test, and I've got the antibodies. So I'm now vaccinated by the hand of God, as it is infused into me as a kind of what I would call relatively self-aware and self-responsible person. So basically, I have proven to myself, and anybody who's willing to believe what I'm saying has value, that a person who is older and supposedly at risk for immunosenescence can actually be immune vital and survive what was supposed to be something that I should be afraid of and that should kill me, and or could possibly kill me. And one of the things that I think is at the foundation of immune capacity is the resistance to being swept into fear.
Yes.
And that's what Kung Fu, samurai warriors, Olympians from ancient Greece, warriors from every society. Warriors are not necessarily killers. They can be, but what they are is ultra prepared and ultra protective. So if I am prepared and called upon to protect somebody else, I will probably do it, depending on the circumstances, of course. And in the meantime, I am prepared and protecting myself.
Yes.
And one of the things that I cultivate purposefully, and the Chinese and other shamanic belief systems or systems of philosophy are always talking about building the capacity to be fearless, to be fearless. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm a kind of fearless person, and I'm a disciplined person, and I'm also a radical, someone who is always against, like what the teacher said, against it, what my parents said, against it, what the government says.
Question it.
Yeah, question it, and in the meantime, cultivate self-capacity.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of hopped up on the idea that an older person is not necessarily immunosenescent. And the things that we've been talking about, the nutrition, the hydration, and also the mindset, which is where the fear can get in or not, are, very important.
It is, it is. Oh, Dr. Roger Jahnke is with us here on Chi Time, talking us through what it's like being an older person at this stage of humanity's evolving. We all have something to offer, something to give. We will have gifts, and your wisdom here is shining through. But also the cultivation that you speak about, that you've spent, many, 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 many years, all your adult life. So I think you are in a privileged position because you took yourself on quite young, and you are now reaping the rewards of that. So there is something to be said for being responsible for your health, for your mind, body, spirit health, and not just negating it or just thinking that I'll just pop a pill rather than getting into the what's beneath it all, So it is a call to self-care, I think, is really big. And I mean, similar. So I was a nurse. That's what I first trained in when I left school, and I was fascinated by the human body, and just I couldn't believe you wouldn't be. It was just like, what? We've got these bodies. Don't you want to know about them? Fascinating, because then I can take care of it, or then I can, notice things that are wrong with it maybe a bit earlier than usual. And so I think that sort of that natural curiosity, I quite enjoy piquing that in others, just about how your fingers work, and look at all those tendons that move when you move your. Isn't that fascinating? I get some people saying, "No, that makes me squirm" or whatever. It's like, why? Why does it happen? But also that you're dispelling the fear that when you're an older person, you're going to get more ill. I think that's something that I actually feel more robust and healthy the older I get than when I was younger. I don't know if it's because I'm just taking myself on a bit more now, or what it is, but I just think that's just like strange. I'm just not going with that. The older you get, the iller you get. I don't think that's necessarily true, and I think you're living proof of it.
When you're a kid, you think that everything is somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
And when we evolve a little bit and become more considerate, meaning not so much considerate to others, but just being a person who considers, you start to realize, or many start to realize, I'm not here because my parents had sex, and therefore it's their fault that I'm having these challenges. I'm here because that was the conspiracy of the universe, and I may even have made the choice to be me in some way that cannot be described in easy language. And so therefore I'm now grown up, and I'm no longer blaming everybody else. And as soon as I stop blaming everybody else, I also start to have a feeling for who's in charge. And so then autonomy and sovereignty start to become worthy of my consideration. But back to you, because you were on kind of a roll there with your own reflection, and I want to be sure that you get to finish on that. And I'm, you can toss anything to me whenever you want to.
Thank you so much. It is that that deep curiosity that I've had for how my system works, and not just my physical body, but like the brain. I think when I was a teenager, there wasn't as much neuroscience around then. It was back in the 1970s, let's face it. And it was early days in a way, but I was fascinated with like the stuff going on in our brain that we just don't know about yet, but we're gonna. And the more that we find out now, it's just absolutely fascinating. And also with the effects when you self-care and you have a robust immune system also, and you understand the process of detoxification and the different levels and layers of the multidimensional detoxification. So you have the physical, of course, but you also have the energetic, which I think the qigong really helps with, the clearing the layers of the etheric body and also the energy around the body organs, and getting them to work together synergistically and inform. And then that was getting me to kind of think about, so why is it people get ill? What is it about these viruses? I'm sure there's a lot we're going to find out more about how viruses actually work. The more they are studied, the more different angles, the different people that are studying them. And what comes around again and again for consideration is these words, the terrain theory. And I wonder if you could speak more into that for us here, Dr. Roger.
Yeah, I love this question. Terrain theory, which basically is asking less what is assaulting me from outside of myself that we can manage and keep from us. That's a topic, and it's a worthy topic. And then the other topic is what is here that has the capacity to resist what is there. And somehow we got addicted to the idea that there's nothing that we can do here. We have to do it all out there. And when I was a kid, I mean, I'll just reveal that I was born in 1947, and some of the earliest images that I have from television, which kind of was happening right at that time. I mean, my grandmother had a television that had a screen on it that was that big.
Ooh.
And in front of that screen was a huge magnifying glass, which made the image look about that big. Now I have a television on my wall
Yeah,
that is bigger than I can even
massive.
reach out. But
So
on that TV, there were cigarette ads with doctors smoking with their patients and basically suggesting that they smoke because it will calm them down and smoke. I mean, nicotine does have nicotine. I mean, tobacco is an herb,
yeah.
and in many societies, tobacco is a sacred herb. And the nicotine is a kind of nootropic. Nootropic means a highly refined nutritional feature or molecule that has an impact on function, and some of what cigarettes cause internally, or the ingestion of nicotine in other ways, it is a little bit like caffeine, and caffeine is also a nootropic, a kind of very specialized nutritional factor. And so what we do is that we sort of ruin what those things are for by making them into industries with big advertising budgets, which then convince people that they should be doing these things.
Too much.
And and so going back to your question, what we've accomplished, which some people would even say is a fantastic accomplishment because it has stockholders and markets and farmers who grow billions of tons of tobacco or billions of tons of caffeine or billions of tons of cannabis. They're all big it's the agro-industrial complex. But the story that we're trying to get at here is that, is the enemy out there or is the enemy in here? And if I assume that the enemy is out there, then I'm not doing anything about the traumas that I've experienced in my life. I'm not doing anything about the mindset, that I've derived from living in the home that I lived in and listening to the people that I listened to. And so, interestingly, in terms of every indigenous medical system, there are two kinds of medicine. And in Chinese medicine, it's described, these two kinds of medicine are described as what we call, number one, kill the pathogen, which is what Western medicine does, is that it formulates a way to be able to fend off the pathogen. That's the only kind of medicine we have in the Western world until very recently with lifestyle medicine and functional medicine, except for, herbal medicine and homeopathy, which have been around for a really long time. And the second type of medicine in Chinese medicine is called support the righteous, enhance the righteous. In the Western world, we think the word righteous means that you're a good Christian and that you hate every other kind of religion. But that word righteous also exists in every language. And in the Chinese language, the word righteous means upright and capable. And also in accord with nature. And so people can apply the second kind of medicine, enhance the righteous, by doing all the things that we've been talking about with the hydration and the sleep and the nutrition and the exercise and the stress management and the connection with nature and the connection with people and the autonomy and all that. But we live in a society that believes that that doesn't matter. And therefore, when somebody says, you can't do anything, well, they didn't even say that. They didn't say you can't do anything about it. They said the only thing you can do. And that's a way of saying there's nothing you can do except for line up, at the medical industrial complex. So when we talk about terrain, so I know that was a long rant that wasn't about the terrain. So then the terrain, what I said was, and I'll say again, is that every indigenous form of medicine is based on maximizing the function of the internal terrain. And so on the landscape of the internal terrain is every aspect of yourself, your physiological aspects, your anatomical aspects. Physiological is functional, anatomical is the thing. So the liver is anatomical, and it has a functional capacity. That's the physiology of the liver, and et cetera. And so the interactivity of the internal terrain and its capacity to do the things that it does, which is send out neurological impulses to grasp and deliver nutrient molecules of nutrition, and then to mobilize a natural detoxification system eternally called the elimination system, which goes all the way to the ground of the expulsion of metabolic byproducts from the cells and into the lymphatic system and into the blood, and then through the kidneys and the liver discharged as waste products. So if you think of a beautiful country scene with trees and birds and a stream coming down and mountains in the distance, and that is a terrain. And that same image can be applied internally to think about, like, well, where do the nutrients that are in the soil get up leveled into the trees, and in what way do the birds and the bees and the butterflies and the turtles absorb nutrients from that, and then the cycle of the inner ecology, which is another way to talk about the terrain. So acupuncture, herbal medicine, all of those are terrain-based. They don't try to kill what's out there from a pharmaceutical source. They ready themselves and to protect themselves from an internal source, which is referred to as righteousness. And in the Tao Te Ching, which is a beautiful book about the nature of life and the cosmology of being, there's a pretty consistent reference to the whole idea that the nature is already whole and completely functional on its own, which really suggests that the internal nature, and I'll just give a quote from the Tao Te Ching, number 10, and I won't give the whole thing, I'll just give one part. Can you mobilize your breath, engage your body to sustain the suppleness of a newborn with no cares? So that speaks to the fear, but it also speaks to the breath practice and the movements. So if we mobilize the breath and the movement to be able to have insights and awarenesses about how the world really operates and our place in it and what is our responsibility as a sovereign being, then we will have no cares, and therefore we will be supple and sustainable.
You see, it comes back to self-care, self-awareness, and Dr. Roger is with us here on Chi Time. That was lovely. Thank you so much. So just to start, I mean, I would love to talk to you about metaphysics, but I've got a feeling that might have to come into another session, if that's all right with you.
Right?
Oh,
We just did it when we said, and we'll go on to whatever you want, and I would be thrilled to come back and talk deeper.
thank
But
you.
that is the metaphysic
Yeah.
of the Chinese philosophy and medicine,
Yeah.
is to understand that the cosmological presence of our eternal self within our local space-time dimensional self is the essence of what one can explore and understand and then take action on.
Yeah.
So that's the tip top
Fundamental.
of the esoteric.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
can talk about elements and directions and so forth, but when we get to the tip of it, it's basically how is the eternal self
Yes.
present in the local self, and who's in charge and what to do about it.
And it's as simple as that, folks. So that eternal self bit, I remember when I was doing my Qigong training back in the early 2000s, and I was invited to bring my awareness into the back of myself and to just drop into that support of my spine, as well as the back of my brain, the back of my legs, back of my arms, and to really inhabit this place that felt safe and strong, and to let myself not be so involved with that which was happening outside as the dramas of life. And I really got, oh my goodness, I am this in the back of me, but I'm also that in the front and doing the thing. It's like, how can I be both? It's like, oh, well, there's that oscillation that goes between, or is there communication that goes between? But that eternal witness bearer, the observer of all, was one of the big shifts in my own personal practice to kind of realize was such a fundamental truth within me.
Yeah. Om.
Oh,
Hallelujah.
Shanti. Yeah, it's a big one. So getting to, because I really love you to talk us through a little process in a moment, but let's just sort of tidy this up a little bit around where we are in the world right now, and having to manage fear, which you've spoken into really clearly, and becoming a sovereign being, or just reminding yourself that you already are, and that your choices are important, and that your ability to heal is innate within you, and that your breath is key to helping you manage your energy and your mindset. But I'd just like to bring up this quote from Albert Einstein with the situation that is in the world right now. It's a really famous one. It's what you cannot solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it. you must learn to see the world anew. And it's like, this consciousness piece, yeah? This
Yep.
call to conscious awareness, this conscious awakening to ask the questions that are so, like, might be a bit uncomfortable, that wake up call. And so to trust that the problems that we have in the world at the moment, they're like bashing up against the old paradigm. They're just not working. I mean, going back to war and stuff and fighting and it just seems so archaic. And yet there's a call, talking about the Ukrainian government, they're calling for peace talks. They want to discuss this. They're wanting to take things to the table and go, let's be conscious beings about this dilemma that we have. And I really feel that there's this massive shift on the world stage of old paradigm playing out the war games and new paradigm. We don't have to do it like this anymore. We don't need to use the old consciousness to create the solutions for the new ways of being. Have you got anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, it's interesting because if we talk about democratizing personal power, so in other words, let's start not with democratizing a government or a country, but the essence of democratizing countries is the democratizing of individuals. And so we've had the Russian Revolution, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Chinese Revolution, and all of these have gone in the direction of supposedly giving more power to people and recognizing power of people. But actually what happens is that it transitions into a recognition that it's more fun for some people to have winners and losers. And so what happens is that once you've had your revolution, and by the way, you guys in the UK, you haven't had your revolution yet.
Oh,
Let's don't go there. You'll navigate that in your own time. And I think that the UK has the foundation of the presence of democratized ideals and the whole concept of a depreciation of imperialism and so forth, and that's going it's on its own trajectory.
yeah.
But the point that I'm making is that for whatever reason, from the year around 1700 until today, every gesture towards democratization has not penetrated to the citizens, and therefore it becomes a market. So this whole thing is markets. And I mean, you could talk about how Russia and Europe, are two counter forces. Let's just leave it at that. And that the Ukraine is a right in the middle, and that Russia would be happier to go its own way if Ukraine was a part of it, because Ukraine is a buffer. But then what happens after that is that Poland and Romania and so forth, they become the buffers.
Yeah.
And so it's still conflict
Polarized, yeah.
between ideals. And so that seems like it has to be fair for a person to have an ideal. But I'm not sure that it's fair for that person then to get elected, whether fairly or not, and then put their ideal on everybody. But really what's in place is the systematization of hiring people or electing people, whatever you want to call that, to make the decisions. And then you realize that these people, they're in a market, and they're in the market to win. And they're very rarely in a market to win for everyone. They're more in a market to win for themselves. And so we've actually systematized this disparity between the people who are in the position to be winners and the people who are consistently more and more depreciated. And of course, as we do what we do to currencies, then a person's dollar or their pound becomes less valuable because we keep trying to keep these people in their big houses. Uh, and so then we get inflation, and then the person who's got a dollar living down there, that dollar has less value, and the people who are up there have so many dollars that it doesn't matter if it doesn't have any value. So I don't know what question you asked me. I hope you'll ask it again. But I think that is what I would say about the foundation of any conversation that we're going to have about whatever you ask.
So the democratization. I think so I started off with the Albert Einstein quote about having to if we want to change things in the world, we need to use a different consciousness. So you have answered that in your own way around
Well, let
it's
me
not
say one
happened
more
before.
thing.
Of
So I
course.
think we're basically going to experience, or I hope we're going to experience, the elimination of markets that are based on people who live well, and turn to a kind of marketplace that is that allows for people to transact without having to go through banks.
Right. That's big. They're not going to
So
like that.
that's blockchain.
That is blockchain. Yes, of course. That's a whole nother topic. I tell you what, could we just go down the Global Transformation Project
Oh yes, please.
but the whole the avenue down there? Because we recently had Bill Douglas on the show, the founder of the World Tai Chi Qigong Day, and also the author of the Gospel of Science, or the Good News of Science, and talking about the power of coming together as in common unity for education, to actually get the truth into education, to assist the kids to grow into healthful adults, and to understand that to accessing the alpha brainwave patterns through, as he called, the big five of the yoga, tai chi, qigong, mindfulness and meditation, that actually helps them learn better. It helps them be more comfortable in their skin, and it helps them be more creative and actually become, the kind of human beings that they'd enjoy being, rather than ones that are quite troubled. I mean, the instances of teenagers being very sad, shall we say, a lot of depression in teenagers, and high suicide rates and everything. It's like, we need to look at this. This is a real situation we're in. So, I've got to take my hat off to him for bringing this all together, and for calling us in to look at how can this happen? How can we get these salient ways of being, educating the kids? How can we get that into the systems where it needs to be, into the public education systems? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, let me just first say that Bill Douglas is an old friend of mine, and I think one of the most historic things ever is World Tai Chi and Qigong
Yeah,
Day.
isn't it?
And when you think about, like, world that did not come from Boston, it did not come from London, it did not come from DC, it did not come from New York, it did not come from LA, it did not come from Beijing or Tokyo or Moscow or any other what we would call highly, shall we say, contemporary metropolitan area. It came from some place called Oklahoma or Missouri, or I don't even know,
Kansas.
Kansas. And so just that something so rich could arise from outside of what we would call locations of intellectual progress is fantastic.
I mean,
And then
he does tell the story of it in the Chi Time. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just back up a bit, a couple of episodes before, you can hear how this all came into being, which was actually quite a magical way. Well, it's quite a poignant way that it landed for him. So yeah, it just, as he said, he felt like it was going to happen anyway. It just felt like it wanted to happen, as it, like the global transformation project wants to happen. He just happens to have realized it and is going, come on then, who else is hearing this call, kind of thing.
so then the education of children, it's political.
Ah,
It
okay.
just can't not be, because it's another one of the functions of the systematized framework of what we like to call democracy,
Mm.
but which is not, frankly. And so parents walking into the school board isn't going to do it, because the school board will say, we're going to mandate this, we're going to mandate that. We actually had an election, and by the way, I am not a political person. I do not have a political affiliation, and I have always voted for the third party.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, well, I might have voted for a Democrat at one point, but the point is that I don't believe that in the American view, that the Republicans and the Democrats are one right and one wrong. So how can I vote for these people? I'm in a nonpartisan or a transpartisan
Mm.
circumstance, and
Okay.
therefore I don't care what party a person's from. I want to know what they're talking about.
Mm.
And one of the things that happens when we get this systematization of hierarchical, which is really like latter day imperialism, frankly.
Mm.
So it's not democracy. And so what happens is that the school board is going to do what they do, and they're going to get what they should do from people who are above them, and that's going to be governors and state legislators and so forth, and they're all in the winners. Even if they won or lost their election, they're winners because they can play the stock market with knowledge that
Mm.
average people don't have, and they can make laws that sustain themselves. So how can we do this? And the answer is going to be that, well, one more thing about how it kind of went. There was an election for a governor in Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and the Democrat, when asked the question, something about, how can we change our schools, actually said out loud, we're not going to let parents march in here and tell the schools what to do. And he lost that election, which happened in the next couple of days. He was supposed to win. He lost
Mm.
because he said to parents, you don't matter.
Ooh,
And so when something good comes up from the bottom,
yeah.
even in what's supposedly a democracy, it can't, because of markets. And so I
Mm.
think that homeschooling is going to be
Yeah.
is more and more and more happening. People are taking their kids out of schools. They're
Yeah.
starting new
Yeah.
schools. In
Yeah.
1972, I was part of starting a school in Appalachian, Ohio. I was living in
Okay.
a rural community where people are growing their own food. I was doing what we're thinking we should be doing now. I was doing that
Yeah.
in 1970, starting our
Great.
own school.
Yeah.
And so what I think is probably what I think could happen is that those people who have been going party line are going to start thinking clearly and realize that it doesn't matter what party they're in, because those people that they're electing are in the end depreciating their capacity to be a participant in a free and sovereign personal life. And so I think revolution all around is
Yeah.
basically what it's all about. So prepare through self-care to be involved in a revolution.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jahnke. I like the word revolution. If you go R apostrophe evolution, that's what it is
Yay.
about, isn't it?
That one.
Revolution. So, have we got time for a little short process for people before we go? What do you
Sure.
think? I'm just sort of, yeah, along these topics of like presencing into your sovereign state and the call to personal mastery. I'll just give you that for a starter, shall I, and let you run with whatever comes through.
Yeah, well, it comes to mind to do a gesture, which is a very simple
Okay.
gesture.
Yeah.
And while we're doing this, I'm going to stay seated, but I'm going to move back just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And this gesture is basically, it's the opposite of cloud hands. Cloud hands in Tai Chi, often used in Qigong,
Mm-hmm.
the elbow leads,
Yes.
or the thumb is leading.
Yeah.
In this one, which is has many names, of course, because it's a part of many um, traditional and also contemporary qigong forms, goes the opposite way. So instead of the elbow or the thumb leading, we're going this way, where the hand is leading or the fingers are leading. Mm-hmm. And above is what we might want to call the third eye, or the pineal level, or the brain level. And down below, when this one's going here, then it comes down and then it crosses my belly button. So we're making a circle around the heart or heart mind, and we're basically, let's just think of it as clearing the, if you want to call it a dantian, the upper dantian, or if you want to call it a chakra, third eye chakra, clearing, and then when the hand comes down here, it's clearing the lower dantian, and we're spinning, making a spin around the heart or middle dantian. Goes like this: raise hands. One hand begins and is basically, one of the names of this is the ancient dragon washing. So dragons are transcendental and about as close as you can get to the cosmological unity. And so when the dragon is washing, what it's doing is clearing everything but the truth. So this hand comes down, now this hand comes up, and while the next hand is washing in front of the third eye, and you can think of qi coming out of the Laogong point if you want to have your hand facing your third eye, or you can do it as a washing, like a clearing gesture, either one. Then the breath. So breathe in when your hands are to the side, and you can change it if you want, but we'll breathe in together right now. Then exhaling, so that's breathe in, now exhaling, top hand in front of the third eye, bottom hand in front of the umbilical, making circles around the heart or the heart mind. Breath in, exhaling. So we're not only clearing with the gesture, but when we exhale, it's like we're expelling CO2, but you can also use the exhalation to expel tension. And one of the beautiful things about Qigong is that everything's like a story or a poem or a philosophical idea. And so as you're cleansing your third eye and cleansing your, and just keep going. When I stop, don't stop. Cleansing your umbilical, which is where you're connected to your ancestry, which includes ancestral habituation. So what we can be clearing here is chi, clearing the chi of that which is no longer needed. But we can also be clearing assumptions that we have discovered may not be true. Or we can clear the behavior patterns that have been instilled into us from people who maybe we even knew and loved, but who had habituations which depreciate our autonomy now. So breath in, exhale, clearing the energy body, expelling false assumptions with the breath. And one time passing on each side to conclude. Now we've been creating a circle around the heart, so bring one hand over the other and place your hands on your heart and sink into a state of presence wherein everything from the past, everything from the future is out of sight, out of mind, and only presence. So then you can think, well, wait a minute, how do I really be present? Well, you focus on the body, check your breath, check your posture, check your shoulders, soften your fingers, soften your toes, scan the body for tension. On the exhalation, release your tension if you can. And then you might think, well, you know, what am I going to do? Just keep doing that? And yes, you can do that. That's what's called mindfulness, just constantly scanning and acknowledging. But what else you can do is transmit chi. Transmit chi to yourself, your organs. You can even place your hands on your particular organs. We won't do that now. Let's just stay with the heart. You can also transmit chi to people that are at a distance. And today, instead of sending chi to my family, which is something that I do, and I'm sure those of you who practice Qigong do, I am sending chi to those people in the world who make decisions to be able to reach conclusions that are infused with divine energy, divine chi. Not local chi, not political chi, not commerce chi, not a preference chi, but transcendental, cosmological, divine chi. To decision makers. And then, just to conclude, sending that same divine chi to the citizens of Europe. Everybody in every household is going to need to prepare themselves, because this could go on, and sanctions could have an influence on our own convenience. So as I'm sending my warmest, sincerest intention for support for the people of Europe, and especially of Ukraine, and even the citizens of Russia, and citizens of the entire world, I just want to acknowledge how incredibly impressed I am being influenced by the courage of the citizens of Ukraine. Wow.
Yeah.
And then concluding, just gathering from around us and bathing ourselves, just to hold on to the presence, or the presencing, for one more moment. And then back to you, Clara.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was
Indeed.
so delicious. That still is so delicious. That way of personal presencing and self-care, filling yourself up with this elixir of life, your chi, your natural vitality, and then overspilling that to people that could do with a little bit more light in their lives, feel a bit more support, like we're considering them, we're inspired by them, we see them. This call to righteousness, righteousness within and righteousness without. The truth, the alignment for the truth of being. Let's see how far this can ripple and play now. And each of us can do what each of us can do and be, and never feel like that you don't make a difference, because you do. Where you place your energy is how you make a difference for yourself and others. So Dr. Roger Jahnke, thank you so much for being part of Chi Time once again.
Anytime.
Thank you.
It's really fun for me to just have the opportunity to think these thoughts, and to do it in a context where, because I think these thoughts all the time. So thinking these thoughts in a context where there's some communitarian engagement, and maybe even the potential for supporting people in tipping in to a sense of greater autonomy and self-awareness is profound. And I thank you so much for what you do to contribute to this global transformational process.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for seeing me, seeing little bits that I do. I think we can all make a difference in our own way when we're working with the inspiration of being. I mean, I often joke about how Chi Time is my hobby. I mean, it kind of is, because I would do this anyway. I'm doing this anyway. And it has been like this for the last 10 years. And it gives me the opportunity to be able to speak to you and to have these sort of conversations. And I know they inspire others, because we get communications and we never know what it is that would have been said or spoken that will just be something that will be that piece of the jigsaw for somebody else. And they'll go, that, ripple, ripple, ripple. And then how they then speak to other people in their communities. And so it continues. It's like, we don't need to know what effect we have, really. We just trust, that it continues to flow on. Although it's lovely to hear from you. Please do send me any messages to info@ukhealthradio.com or hop over to the QIKI Temple on Facebook, or if you're watching this on YouTube, super simple, drop it in the comments and do remember to subscribe, so then you'll know who's coming up next on Chi Time. But before we leave, Dr. Roger Jahnke, how can people find out more about you and get involved with what you're up to?
Yeah, the easiest thing I think for today is that I'll just keep it very simple. There are many things that I could point to, but I'm really inclined to want to hold the focus on our international potential for transformation. So I'll just give one, and you can put other stuff into the notes
Okay.
if you want to, web address, which is iiqtc.org. The long form is Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi, of which I am the director. The short form is iiqtc.org.
Beautiful. And as you have lots of content on there, you have free content, you have access to courses that you offer. You also have scientific papers that you link to, and you give people avenues to continue their research. You know, what are you wanting to know more about? It's a real wealth of information there on your site. So thank you so much. Thank you for so much for everything you do and be indeed in the world. Tis an honor. Tis an honor.
Thank you so much too. Wish you well.
You too.
May all find peace.
Keep your chi up, my friend.